How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel, Pete's Carport, and we're gonna dive right back into the car that you have become very familiar with over the last few videos, and that's the 1994 Mercedes S500 that we got for free, that we fixed, and now we're starting the restoration. So I've done a ton of videos now on this car, so no need to go into full detail on it, but what we need to do is start pulling out the interior, all the broken pieces. As you can see back here, I started to work on it and all this stuff was just broken into pieces. This car has the rear reclining seats, and I mentioned that in the very first video. Our parts car over here, which I said was a 99, but now I found out it's a 97, which doesn't matter. But somebody actually put a comment that said that can't be a 99 based on the odometer. I didn't even look at any of that stuff, and they were actually correct. If we come down here to the build date, it does say 97 right there, 3 of 97. So it's probably a 97, 98 model, probably 97 since it was early 97. It was built in, but none of that matters. We are going to pull out the seats out of this car and start transforming that car. We're also going to be taking the upper paneling here because that's all in perfect shape. Now, all of this stuff is not difficult to take out, but you have to be very patient. And a lot of these older cars, things start to fall apart. As you can see, somebody probably tried to swap speakers or do something back here at some point and broke a lot of the tabs and a lot of these pieces. Now, like I just mentioned, this car has the reclining rear seat option. I'm not 100% sure, since that one's a non-reclining rear seat option, if that's going to fit in here, because the motors do connect to this back seat. It's been a while since I've taken one of these out, but I did have a car that we parted out a long time ago, probably 5 years ago, that had the reclining rear seat. I ended up selling off that part of it, but I remember the motors being attached to it. So it is a fun little task. I've got to get the motors disconnected down here, and there's 3 bolts here, and that'll allow me to pull the seat out with the motor. I've gotten most of it otherwise disconnected. You've got bolts down here, you've got 2 down here, and I think 2 on that side, at least on this model. And then a lot of this was broken, so normally you're going to have to take the center part out, but I'm going to kind of go through that on our parts car, because we're going to be doing a very similar thing over there. No need to show you all these broken pieces because I'm not even going to mess around with them. I'm just going to probably pull a lot of that out, but we'll properly take it out on that car. So let me get set up. I'm going to start pulling everything out of this car. Hopefully we can start transforming it by the end of the video. I'm very excited about what this is going to look like because I've got some ideas, and we'll go through that once we get everything out of here. Okay, so I figured out what could be a better way to get to these 3 bolts. I could not find anything online for the reclining rear seat and how to remove it. I've removed one of these before, so I know there's definitely a way. But what I found worked really good is to lift this up. Now you can hear I kind of cracked it over there, but we know we're replacing all of this. So this might not be the best method if you've still got pieces in. You want to make sure you get everything out up there. But now I have plenty of room to get to these bolts. Okay, now that I've got this seat mostly out, obviously the motor is still connected down there. I can kind of tell right off the bat looking at the other car that this is a completely different bracket. I kind of knew it was, but the main thing is going to be that this is these pieces right. So these pieces right here are going to be unique to the reclining rear seat because that's going to cover up the gap as it goes forward or backwards. Also, I believe, I have to find out when we take it apart, but I think how these are on like a pivot right there, which unfortunately I think this side is broken. I gotta look. Those are going to be different than the one without a reclining rear seat. So obviously the motors and the brackets and all that are completely different. So my options right now are, if I want to try to keep the reclining rear seat, which I love that option, I'm probably going to have to dye the seat, which is in amazing shape. There's no rips, there's no tears, none of that. So that is a definite possibility. Or we could swap everything out over here and just go with a non-reclining rear seat. Because if you look, there's none of that felt attached to this seat because it doesn't need to go forward. And then we're gonna have to use all these pieces. So I don't know if we're gonna have gaps or missing things. So we're gonna have to get everything out and kind of make a decision. But this seat is also in perfect shape. Obviously we can use the bottom part of it. So some decisions to make. Now, the other big struggle we're gonna have is, since the comfort control module was completely tore apart on this car, I tried to put one back in. all the wires are all messed up. I can't get these front seats to go forward or back, and all we can access right now are these back bolts, but we do have access to the motors there. So my goal is to try to get these bolts out and then jump the motor, try to get it to go backwards actually, because we need it to come back, and see if we can get those front bolts. It might be a task. It might be on the next video, but we're gonna try to get it done as much as we can in this video, have some fun with it, and start swapping this interior out. So I'm gonna try to remember the order of taking these things out. I couldn't find a whole lot of information out there, and I don't wanna break anything because this is the stuff that we're gonna use, and I'm gonna take my time. If you're doing this at home, do the same thing. You can have very fragile pieces up in here, and they can be difficult to get out. But from what I remember, you start by opening up your first aid kit box. Take your first aid kit out if you've got one. See, that's an old one, obviously original. And you want to take these screws. There's more than one. I know there's at least one screw. And then these screws right here that kind of hold it in on the outside. Then you've got your speaker screws along there. And then we're going to start lifting up very gently to make sure we're not missing any screws. So let me go ahead and get those screws out and see if we can get these things out. A quick fill-in. So I went ahead and took off the screws right there. And what that does is allow you to remove the speaker cover. And there should be, yep, right there's another screw. So underneath the speaker cover on each side, I'm gonna lift this up and remove your speaker covers. Like I said, you gotta be cautious. So I had a little trouble getting the other side speaker cover off because somebody broke the tabs on this one, which made it slide out easily. But you've got these little tabs, and if you look, you got these holes, and you gotta pull it the right direction to slide it out of those tabs. Now also, it looks like this is broken, unfortunately, but we might be able to use pieces from the other one to make this work. I'm not too worried about it. It's not something you lift up all the time. But now let's move forward. Let's move everything out of the way. The next move, like I said, is gonna be to take off the screws right here. And that's gonna allow us to slide this out and access more screws to take off more pieces. So let's do that. Okay, so I realized before we could remove this back panel, we needed to pull this seat off. And I thought it was gonna be pretty easy. So I knew there was a couple bolts down here. Now on the other car, there was 2 bolts. On this one, there's only one on each side and then one in the middle. So you have 3 total. And then here's where it gets really completely different from that reclining rear seat. There's a bracket that I took off the 2 bolts there. And I think there was a bolt, yeah, right there. And I still couldn't get it out. So I lifted this seat thinking I gotta be able to see what's holding this thing on. And I removed the entire bracket, still could not get this seat off. And I'm like, there's gotta be something holding it. So I pulled this piece off here, this little velvet plastic piece, by removing the door stripping and just pulling that up. And of course, there's another bolt there, another bolt on the other side. And by lifting the seat, I bent this a little bit, easy to bang back into place. So no big deal on that. But this is a struggle, guys. I could not find anything online that showed exactly how to access these. So most likely what you've got to do is remove those bolts from that panel, which you can do once you pull off that center piece. You'll see at least those 2 bolts, if not this third. I think you do need to take them all. And then you've got to pull this panel over here. The only good thing is they're all 10 millimeters. So all you really need to do is get a 10 millimeter bolt and a screwdriver, and you can get this entire thing apart. I actually found that this set right here, this cheap Walmart set, worked out perfect for this type of job. So I just grabbed that because I needed a couple different size screwdriver bits, and that has a whole bunch in there. Well, let me get these 2 bolts off on each side and pull this seat out, and I'll show you guys how different these really are. Okay, once again, guys, there is a lot to do to get this panel out. You have to remove those wings. They are very difficult to get out. I used a trim removal tool to pop each section out. Still, it was not perfect. These things are very brittle. They've got these tabs right here you got to be very careful with. I bet you if I wiggle it just a little bit, it'll snap. On the other side over there, it actually broke one of the tabs. And then these little light things here that you got to unplug, those are super brittle. I didn't expect that. Those are kind of crumbling. But once you get that off, there's 2 screws up here, which were already broken on mine. I might have done it, but it could have been done before. So this little piece here needs to be unscrewed, and then you can slide it forward. And of course, you've got the sunshade, which I don't have on the other car, but I'm already knowing this is a completely different setup. So I think I'm gonna have to figure out modifying this panel here to fit in there keeping the other back seat and just dyeing it, because these ones have the vacuum actuated headrest, whereas the other ones are motorized. And unfortunately, I broke one of the tabs pulling this thing out, just not realizing. I should have known to grab my tool here and pop it off, but then I went to the other side and was able to pop off the other side, and it broke too. So just very brittle things. So just be very cautious, even taking your time. There's a chance you can break some things in these older cars. This is pretty easy to replace, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. Probably not very expensive. But just all these panel pieces, you know, I see the cars all the time with broken panel pieces. That's why I don't suggest swapping out interior, and that's why I was kind of against it, but I figured might as well try. I already had a bunch of broken pieces in the rear panel on the other car. Let's get all this out. Let's see what we can modify and what we can make look good. So as you guys can see, this has kind of become a disaster, but I'm gonna make the best of it. I'm starting to look at exactly what I can do here. So here is the rear panel we took out of the parts car. Completely different than the setup that's back here, but you can see I put those speaker covers up in there, which I'm going to go ahead and paint. You can see they faded from the sun. Same thing with this panel, faded from the sun. Now here's where it gets weird. I'm going to go ahead and take the speaker cover off. If you see how that has almost half of what the speaker cover section is here, so like right here, and then what normally happens is it comes to this piece here. If you look there, you'll see the little bracket that sticks up. That's so the seat can recline. I was showing you guys that earlier. Where do I got the piece? Oh, the piece is right here. As you can see, it's completely shattered. Both of them are. The one was in the trunk. This one was sitting up there, completely shattered. And so the issue is I can't use these because they're completely terrible. So my idea is, if you look, the size of that, I could Dremel this, have it come up like that, and maybe glue the speaker cover to this so that slides in, and maybe figure out some way of mounting it. But I think we can get it to stay in there really well, because you can screw the speaker covers back down once they're in there. So I'm going to play around with this, and I think that's what we're going to get done in this video. I did not expect it to be this much of an issue. There's absolutely no way I think I'm going to be able to get that other rear backing seat up in there. So we're going to have to pull this reclining one out, at least from what I think. The main thing I want to do right now is go ahead and get this part made here, and then look at either dyeing that or see if the other seat will fit in there. And I just won't have my headrest, which is kind of annoying because I really like the headrest being able to go up and down. So let me think about this, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this apart. We'll get this slid in there and take a look at exactly what we came up with. Let's go ahead and take a look at, geez, everywhere I step, I swear there's broken pieces of plastic. It's like shattered glass. Guys, keep in mind when you're taking these cars, geez, when you're taking these cars apart, things are very brittle. Things will break. I mean, take a look at these. Before we take a look at that, take a look at both of these third brake lights. Has anybody ever seen one of these fully intact? I would love to get one that works, or some kind of aftermarket thing, because it's gonna look like crap without anything in there. And even the bracket's broken, but take a look at how good this looks. I just mocked up the seat, so I just got it underneath some wood. I wanted to make sure the headrest would go back into place, and it does. So now what I gotta do is pull those speaker covers, paint them. Let's look at it from up here. See if we can get a good angle without reflection. It's kind of hard. There we go. So I think it's gonna look really good with that two-tone in there and the pieces that I cut. So let me show you what's kind of left of this back panel. And I just used some shears, kind of marked it up and cut right through it. It wasn't a perfect cut, but once you slide it up in there, I may even put some rubber pieces on the edge here just to make that perfect. But it's all gotta be screwed in. Something's gotta be glued together. I'm gonna try to make it as perfect as I can, but I might keep that part out, keep the seat out, go down and get the back window tinted, because I already know, I've had it happen before, where when they get up in there to tint, they're gonna lean on that stuff and it's gonna break. So yeah, hopefully this shows you guys the difficulties of trying to pull parts out, swap parts out on these older cars, if you haven't already tried it. I mean, look at that speaker cover. Everything is very, very brittle, especially here in Florida. Now, that does not limit it to other states. The sun gets almost every place during the summer, so you do end up getting a lot of brittle pieces. Even in this car here that had the sunshade, You know, it was garage kept probably for a lot of its life. It still had a ton of brittle parts up in here. So I went ahead and removed the reclining rear seat, the gray one here, and said, you know what, I want to look and see if we can get this black one in here, because I want to see how it's going to look, how everything's going to kind of go together, and I might end up using it. So I started pulling it apart, and mainly what you can't get to work on this is going to be this bracket here. So this goes up here, and on the other car they've welded in some plates that this bolts to. I thought maybe up underneath there, but nope, there's nothing underneath there, and if you just drill holes it's going to be too low, so we'll have to eliminate that. But that's not really the main thing holding it in, because even when I took that completely off, this seat was very intact. So I had to make sure that this one still had this part here, and it does. So what I have to do is, there's little clips that slide on there so the bolts can go through. So they set it up for that, but they did not set this up to be a non-reclining rear seat, because obviously somebody optioned this for a reclining rear seat. So they moved forward with that package. It's kind of crazy how they did it. I didn't think it was this much difference between everything. So if we take a look here, you're gonna see the bracket here, but you look at this one, and what they did was they welded on a piece here where this can be mounted. And then when you look at this, these are actually very closely the same. You might even be able to get these electronic headrests off, because if you look here, it's the same part, but they've used a plastic piece in here to have it vacuum actuated. And then they've got this cover here. And what the other thing did was it mounted to that back piece that we had to take out that was all shattered. So a lot of different things on here, but it's more just kind of created from the original part. So, and the funny thing is they have different brackets that are on the bottoms here. If you look, you have the ones here that are 2, and then you have just 3 individual ones, but they all have, the holes are there. So everything is there. I've just got to put the little clips on there so that everything can bolt in. So with all that said, I already went ahead and vacuumed out everything up there. It was so disgusting from all the broken pieces of plastic. Let's go ahead and see if we can get this thing mounted in here and how it's gonna look. I'm actually kind of excited. Then we can kind of put all that back together. I didn't want to end this video with nothing, but now we're gonna have something to show you guys. Well guys, after beating the crap out of myself and thinking that I was gonna end this video without having anything done, I got the seats in. Not only did I get the seats in, we built a custom back panel. It needs to be cleaned down. I need to paint those speakers, but everything is sitting in there perfectly and it looks factory. Let me show you guys from the outside. Let me try to get a nice angle here. I mean, look, it would not have been that way if I tried to do the reclining rear seat. Now, of course I can modify it, but the reclining rear seat has the pieces that would normally snap onto here. And you can see they have the felt piece that clips on there. It's completely different. I tried to mount it on here. I'd have to weld something across there to snap it on. Not something I'd want to do, but one thing I could try to do is modify these motors to work on those headrests so that we could use the button inside and lower and raise those headrests. That would be really cool. That's a project. Now, I kind of have an extra rear seat that's gray and has all the reclining motors that I might end up getting rid of, because I think I like the way this looks, guys, and I'm not upset at all about it not having the reclining rear seat. In fact, I really didn't use it much. It was just a cool feature that I wanted to have in my car. Who knows, maybe I'll hold on to this. We will dye it, we will put it back in, I don't know. Right now, I'm very, very happy. I'm glad this all got taken care of. Now, the big thing is, I kind of wanted to see what you guys thought about this. I'm thinking about leaving these 2-tone door panels to kind of have the black, the dark gray, and the light gray accents throughout the entire interior, since we're not going to change everything. Or we can change these door panels out. I can change out like the lining here. I'm definitely going to do these pieces here. Unfortunately, they break a lot when you're taking them off, so that's my fear. And then we got all the VIP stuff. So we are going to have our leather floor mats. They are custom molded to this. You guys have probably seen that video. That'll cover up almost all of that gray flooring there, and then we're going to put our tables in here and have a lot of accents. So we got a lot of cool stuff to put in here, steering wheel, and I am building some rear tables for the seats too. So those were almost done. I was planning on a video, and I just couldn't get past a certain point and got overwhelmed and said I stepped away. So now I'm looking at them again and kind of coming up with a new plan on those rear tables. So with all that out of the way, guys, I am so glad I got a lot done today, and I actually finished a part of the car that I wanted to get done today, and I can step away now, kind of rethink everything and move on. Next video, we're definitely going to be putting everything back into this car, hopefully get those front seats out of the parts car. I've been working on that as well off to the side. And then we can pop those in here and just kind of take a step back and look. And I'd love to get your guys' feedback. You guys have an awesome day, a blessed week, and I'll catch you on the next video.